Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Everyday Chef. Today I've got a real special treat for you that's one of my personal favorites, and that's my grandmother's hot rolls. And I call it Nana's Manna. And it's really simple. All it is flour, sugar, a little bit of shortening, some water, some yeast, and a little bit of salt. And we're just going to combine it together, make some really delicious hot rolls, and we'll get right into it. Now, the first thing you're going to need is 5 cups of flour. Might sound like a lot, but it's not too bad. Now when I measure out my flour, I'll take a knife with me. Just scoop out 5 cups. And the reason I use the knife is I just drag it gently across the top so I'm sure that I have a nice level cup of flour. Just dump it right into our mixing bowl. A little more there. Now, it's important to use all-purpose flour. Do not use a self-rising flour. And the difference between the two is that a self-rising flour already has a leavening agent and the salt already included in it. By the leavening agent, I mean it really just has baking powder in it. So that's 3. So it's important to use all-purpose flour because we're going to be adding yeast, which is another leavening agent, a little bit later on. And this will be our 5th one. Now, when you're done adding, don't put the flour away. Keep it out because we're going to use it to coat our board and to put some flour on our hands while we're kneading our dough. And the next thing we're going to add to the flour is just some shortening. Now with the shortening, notice I still have my knife. Also going to grab a spoon. When I asked my grandmother for this recipe, I asked her how much shortening she put in there, and all she said was about the size of a large egg. So no real exact science. Just scoop some out here. That's about the size of a large egg, give or take. We're going to set that aside as well because we're going to come back to the shortening in just a minute too. And it's also good to break up the shortening when you put it into the flour so it's easier to incorporate. Just cut little portions off, and you can see I'm just wiping it on the back of the spoon and just dropping it in the flour. So just continue to do this until it's all in there. And then the next thing you're going to add is salt. Now I'm going to be using a kosher salt, and you can most definitely use just a regular salt, or sea salt might give it a little too much salt. I'm going to be adding 2 teaspoons of salt to this. And whether you decide to use kosher salt or table salt, whatever you have on hand, it's 2 teaspoons. All right, that's good. I have my teaspoons and my salt. Whoops. 2 teaspoons of salt. And that's all you add for your dry ingredients there. Now, while you still have your shortening out, this is what I do. You could do it well beforehand or anytime really. What we're going to be cooking our hot rolls in is just a regular old glass baking dish. You can use anything that you have, any size, it really doesn't matter. So you want to take your, whatever dish you're using, whether it's glass or ceramic, and you want to be sure that you grease the inside of it. Now I've never used a cooking spray on this, and I'm sure it would work just as well. If I just get some shortening on a paper towel and just apply it all over, just rub it all the way through the glass dish. One reason I like to use the glass as far as this is concerned is because it's a lot easier to see if you have any spots that are ungreased. Just hold it up to the light, right there, and just hold it up to the light and look to make sure that your sides and the bottom of the glass is all nice and greased up. All right, so we're done with that. And now we're also done with our shortenings. We go ahead and top that back off. Now our dry ingredients are here, and now what we're going to do is we're going to mix our wet ingredients. And all that is, it's 2 cups of warm water, 2 packages of yeast, and 10 tablespoons of sugar. That might sound like a lot, but it really has a great flavor to it. So I have a measuring cup here. Set this to the side. And I'm going to measure out my 10 tablespoons of sugar. Now last time I made this, I did cut the recipe exactly in half and it turned out just fine. So you can do that. I'll lose count if I do too many things at once. But you can cut it exactly in half and it'll turn out just fine. And there we go. We have 10 tablespoons of sugar. We're done with that, so we can put the lid back in there. And 2 packages of yeast. Now with the yeast, the directions on this particular brand of yeast says to add it to liquid that is 120 to 130 degrees. If you don't have anything to measure the temperature of the water, that's no problem. Basically, you just want it to be warm, not scalding hot to the touch. Sort of similar as if you were going to test for a baby's bottle or something of that nature. Just maybe a little some on the wrist, and if it's uncomfortable, then it's too hot. I like to know the numbers if things need to be a temperature. So what I do, a little trick I'll show you, I just have my meat thermometer, and I'll hold that into the water and just get an accurate reading of what the temperature is. I figure if it's on the package instructions, I probably should follow it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go over to the sink. We're going to get 2 cups. My cup measure is here. We'll rinse this out. We get 2 cups of warm water. Now this is an active rise yeast. It doesn't really require much time to be activated in the water. A regular yeast would be fine as well. Really the only reason I got this is because it was the first one I saw in the store. There's no particular reason. Again, if you want to judge the temperature, right now it feels a little lukewarm. It might not even be quite hot enough. Be sure that the water is coming down onto the thermometer. And I'm getting about 100 degrees, so I'll go ahead and make it a little bit hotter. There we go. That's good. Right at 120. And just add 2 cups. Right in there. Now if you prefer, you could do this step first and let the yeast sit for a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. It won't harm anything or at all. That's certainly acceptable. And here I have some yeast on the cutting board. And the reason I'm wiping that off is because we're going to be using the cutting board to knead the dough. Keep it clean. Now, I also stir a little bit with the yeast and the sugar just to make sure mainly that the sugar is dissolved. And get all the yeast into the water and make sure it's activated. Alright, there we go, that looks good. Now we're just going to pour one right into the other. That's all there is to it. Really simple to make. This is a great recipe if your kids want to get into the kitchen and help you out and they want to do something. This is something really fantastic that you can get them to do. Plus they get to get their hands dirty in a couple minutes when they knead the dough. Make sure we get all the sugar and the yeast out.